Good evening, friends. We welcome all of you who have taken out your time to be there for our Knowledge Accelerating Growth series. This is second of our series, and we are proud to be having Merclon be partnering us today to have this session. Now I would hand over to Mr. Anurag Mohan to introduce Merclon as well as Steve Smith going ahead. Anurag ji, please take over.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anurag Mohan from Interact Text Labels, Kolkata, representing as Honorary Joint Secretary of LMAI. And our pleasure in welcoming you all for your participation in LMAI's second online session of our Knowledge Accelerating Growth series. So I'd like to provide a brief profile about the company for today's session, Miraculon. So Miraculon is the home of Kodak Flexo Solutions, a standalone company as of April 18, but with a sector-leading legacy in flexographic solutions forged over 10 years as part of Kodak. Miraculon is totally Flexo in spirit, vision, and ambition as they continue to innovate and improve their technology and products towards enabling the Flexo industry unlock the full potential of best-in-class Flexo. Miraculon solutions for the Flexo industry are focused on supporting printing companies to improve their own production efficiency and minimize waste. So they are well placed to tackle their own sustainability goals. So as more detailed description of Steve Smith, Principal Consultant, Miraculon Biosheet. So with over 40 years of experience in the print and packaging industry, Steve Smith has been involved at the leading edge of most technologies that have transformed the industry, particularly from the graphic reprographic side with digital workflows and the demystification of color management. Over the last decade, he has been involved in the packaging sector with Miraculon's Kodak Flexo solution that are benefiting both the brand and the printer, and enabling the industry to transform Flexo from a graphic arts process into a highly repeatable manufacturing process, simultaneously improving quality, efficiency while driving total costs down. Steve is engaged with Miraculon's advanced print application group and works under the guidance of Dr. John Anderson at Miraculon USA. So as not to disappoint anyone, this Steve Smith does not play cricket. So over to Steve Smith from Miraculon. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I don't play cricket. You've probably seen that I don't look anything like Steve Smith. But thank you for taking the time out. We're just going to go through, oops, where are we? Just get my, all right, just need to get my slides going. Okay, so the agenda tonight or this afternoon is going through several areas, just an overview of packaging, the market overview and the trends, color expectations, improving make-ready times, a brief talk about extended color gamut, and also a term which you may not be aware of, well, you may not have heard of, but you'll be aware of in fade to zero. And it's a very large, big topic in terms of when you're looking at gravure or digital transitions. So if we look at the printing and packaging and labels sector, it continues to grow in line and above, even in even in COVID times, where it's growing, and most people in the printing industry now look at packaging and labels as the only area that's going to survive, you know, the era of the internet. And that's based on the fact that there really is no electronic substitute for packaging. You know, and then we've got media fragmentation, mainly digital, has consumers really bombarded with a whole lot of information and messages. And packaging is the last of the media channels that still attracts consumer attention. If we just talk about packaging in India in particular, it's the 5th largest sector in the Indian economy and one of the highest growth sectors in the country. According to the PIA, the sector is growing at an amazing 22 to 25% per annum, quite remarkable. And the other thing is that when you go into a supermarket these days, I'm old enough to remember the 1980s, where the supermarkets had around about 7,000 products in the shelves. They weren't huge supermarkets, but you had a lot of the same product. Today, the average supermarket has about 40 to 50,000 products. So the production volume per product is decreasing, but the number of jobs is increasing. And that's an important thing to bear in mind. Sustainability, you're going to hear a lot about this, and it's becoming, a major topic with brands. And it's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have for brands, and because they've got to look at future-proofing their operations against consumer scrutiny. And certainly that's very true out of Europe and America, and in particular out of where I am in Australia. But brands are looking at recycling, biodegradable substrates, monopolymer materials, paper and plant-based substrates, biodegradable, but also reducing waste through things like lineless labels, which is significant reduction in waste. But then recycling and reusing is okay, but then recycling is a challenge. And how do you actually segregate the different packages? There's a company called Digimark, which has developed a indistinguishable watermark that goes over all of the products in the artwork that actually allows scanners to flick the various types of plastics and different types of substrates into their own recycling channels. So we're going to see more of that. And if you're interested in that, have a look at it's a group called the Holy Grail 2, and it's a European group that's really doing a lot of work in that area. Trends in 2022, we're hearing a lot about inflation. We're going to see rising costs in materials, energy, labor, shipping. We know a lot about shipping. We've spent over $1 million extra this year in shipping, which was unexpected, but mainly because of lack of containers, and the whole supply chain is a mess at the moment. But we're going to see rising costs in all those areas. Now that's going to put a lot of pressure on converters to try and increase their prices. Now that's never an easy thing to do, and because your clients are always wanting to drive their prices down, and but one of the things that we can do to combat is to look at how you can improve production efficiencies. Now, this isn't a statement from me. This is from a statement from Mike Farrelly, who's a strategic consultant with labels and labeling, and it was in a magazine article last month. And it's really about, you need to focus on how to improve production efficiency to become a lower cost producer, not a lower cost seller, but a lower cost producer, so that you can actually either maintain your prices and keep your margin, or be able to drop them a little bit, but without throwing in any margin. Now, the other thing is that Mike goes on to say is sustainability. Whether it's from governments, brand owners, or pressure groups, just about everything's going to be placed at the door of climate change, whether it's environmental issues or energy consumption, factory heating, anything you can do to reduce waste, reduce energy, reduce VOCs is going to be seen as a positive, and you really need to be looking at how you can actually work in that area and have a meaningful bit of action that you can take to the market. Now, we're just going to talk about opportunities to use technology to improve Flexo efficiencies, which was, the topic of this discussion. When we look at digital labels to Flexo, now this is a bit of a contrary term that about 7-8 years ago, I really thought that labels was all going to go down the path of digital. There's a talk of digital presses overtaking and removing the conventional print. You don't have to make plates. You can make a print run of 1. You can make a print run of 100. But one of the things we're seeing is that, and this has been an interesting thing, is that in Australia, I've got a couple of clients that were digital only label printers, and they've moved into Flexo. They've moved into Flexo. And why? Because 60% of label volumes, the volumes, are high volume, low cost, or what are called commodity labels. And that's in the FMCG sector. And I've got images there of in the mold labels, shrink sleeves, anything that it goes into a supermarket shelf is really, and without much finishing, usually 4-color plus a spot, not much in the way of embellishments, but they're really low cost, high volume, and they're commodity labels, and they represent 60% of the volumes. So when you look at digital or Flexo, you look at digital has got a fixed cost. So as you actually, the volume goes up, when people go from a sort of a prestige label into a commodity label, the maths don't work out, because digital costs you the same for one as what it does for 100. That is 100 times the one cost. Whereas with Flexo, the more you print, the lower the cost is, because you've got high setup costs. So many digital-only printers are now looking at hybrid presses or Flexo. Now, just to go through a couple of things in terms of color expectations. And this is, I want to set the scene of really where color management's happening and how you can benefit from that in the future. So when we look at the brand, the design, the artwork, and in today's technology, it doesn't leave this area, it doesn't leave the brand and the design house. But the color expectations are set here. Now, in pre-press, where the artwork's produced, the separations are made and the plates are made, and then the printer gets it and approved proof. But in years gone by, the color expectations used to be set here because the technology wasn't here to make a proof. But today it's all changed, and the color expectations are here away from pre-press. Now, when we look at the key costs over this side in the printer, it's make-ready time, it's waste, it's press time, substrates, and the plates and the inks. They're the main cost factors that are driving it. Now, when you look at a typical make-ready, that is to start up a press, and that is to get, have a proof, get the plates mounted, usually done, well, it is always done offline, if not accurate. Time's lost on the press. Then you've got a setup time, which is just the sleeve changes, putting the sleeves in, taking the old ones out. And then you've got make ready on press, which is setting the registration. Now, a lot of modern presses can do that automatically. So that's been sped up a bit. But then a lot of the time is time spent adjusting the press to match the proof. And there's compromises made. Now, that's all viewed as part of the graphic arts process. Yeah. So, but when I look at the time, and we could argue about whether this is high or low, but I'm using the assumption that on average it's about 60 minutes. Now, a lot of people may be faster than that, which is great, but just for the maths to show you something, I just want to show you what it means to have a 60-minute make ready. So if you have a 1 hour make ready, and you're going to print 20,000 meters on a label press at 150 meters a minute, that's a 2.5 hour run. If you only print 10,000 meters, it's a 1.5 hour run, but an hour make ready. If you're only printing 5,000 meters, it's a 33-minute run, but an hour make ready. So we know the trends are to the smaller run size. So, but when you look at the percentage of make ready to the total press time, up here it's 31%, but down here it's more than half the press time. So for every job you print, you could have printed another one if you didn't have the make ready. And that's why people think, oh, digital's great because I don't have this. So what I want to talk about is that when you print the numbers, and that is with color management solutions, where you accurately set up a press, you set up a color profile, and you can actually reduce your make ready times to at least around about 15 minutes. Still, you've got the changing of the sleeves and the mounting of the plates offline. But in terms of getting ready to color, it should be only about 15 minutes. And that requires accurate proofs that match the print each and every time. And that reduces the make ready time. Litho's been doing this for 20 years. So this isn't a new concept. This isn't something that we thought, well, let's have a crack at it. This has been around for 20 years in litho. Now, and today with plate technology, press technology, ink technology, color management software and plate mounting, it's possible. It's being done as well. Now, just to equate that into jobs, if you look at what the example I first had, where you've got an hour make ready and you're printing, say, 10,000 meters, you can do around about 5 jobs in a 12-hour shift on that basis, right? And I've allowed 15 minutes between jobs just for lost time, but just I'm being conservative. But then if you take each job, the make ready time down to quarter of an hour or 15 minutes, you can actually do 7 jobs in that same time frame, or 40%. Now, a lot of people look at the top line and think, well, that's the best I can do. That's what I've been doing year in, year out. And that's, I can't improve on that. I need another press. I need to run another shift. I need to go to a wider press, a faster press. Well, if you look at the make ready times and reducing that through consistency and with color management, which is being done today, you can do a lot more work with the press you've got. Just reduce your make ready times. Now, the key thing in controlling make ready times is plate consistency. It's got to be predictable. It's got to be consistent every time you put up a plate, because you know, if you have a plate that's one day it's got a 3% dot and the next minute on the same tone it's got a 1.5% dot, it's going to give you a shift in colors. That's not acceptable. It'll give you a shift and you're having to make adjustments on the press. So it's got to be incredibly consistent. The ink control has to be from technologically advanced image surface patterning. Now, we happen to have that. And that's why I talk about this a lot, because we can control the ink. Predictable. It's got to be predictable to match the proof and be able to repeat that on the press day in, day out. Plate mounting accuracy, don't ever underestimate the value of that. And you probably need to spend some money in that if you don't have an accurate mounting device. Because if you look at digital, if you look at gravure, they don't have issues with plate mounting because they don't have to mount them. So, and they're always in register. So if you manually mount something and it's skewed, then that's wasted time on the press. And then consistency in the press setup. So one of the key things is you have to set up the press to be the same each time. You don't change tapes, you don't change analoxes, you don't change ink sets once you've set up your profile. A little bit about surface patterning. The top image is no surface patterning. It's just a polymer plate, and that's a normal traditional Flexo plate. The ink transfer is controlled entirely from the analogs. So whatever the analogs puts down on it, it's what actually is what gets transferred off. Surface patterning, and this is around about 2010, this was released. It's the ink transfer is controlled by the pattern. So the analogs delivers the level of ink, but then the surface patterning then works like a little mini analogs. These the cells you're seeing there around about 4,800 lines per inch. So it's nearly a 5,000 line screen. Now that's ridiculous to think of an analogs being like that, but this is how fine we're talking about, you know, with controlled surface patterning, and that was in 2010. The pattern needs to be repeatable and predictable. It has to be the same each time, because like an analogs, it's got to always deliver the same amount of ink. It's got to be across the entire tonal range. And also it's got to be centered on each dot. That seems weird, but if you have surface patterning, which is just engineered on the surface, you'll have just a random pattern, and it's not that well controlled. Whereas the true surface patterning, digital surface patterning, has to be centered on each dot. Now there's also new advanced technology. It's got multifunctional surface patterns that further controls the ink and stops ink spreading. it's quite remarkable. And we're only talking in terms of 5 to 10 microns in the size of these things. Now, human hair is 70 microns. I used to be able to measure it, but now I don't have any hair. But it's only 70 microns a hair, and we're talking about 5 to 10 microns. So just a little bit about control with predictable surface patterning. This is a plate with surface patterning. This is the area, this is the impression cylinder and the substrate sitting there. You look at there's a depth to the surface patterning, which is controlled. It's only 5 microns deep. And we can control, well, it can be controlled. We've got a plate 4 height and the relief, which is sort of standard. Now, I'll just take you through the process of how this works. What you're seeing is an animation of the ink coming through and then off. Now, you'll see on the right-hand side here, not all of the ink comes out of the surface pattern cell. Now, that's like an analogs. And that's why with a controlled surface pattern, you can actually use less ink, because the ink that's being delivered by the analogs, not everything comes out of the analogs, but equally not everything comes out of the surface patterning. And so you're actually applying a very smooth layer of ink, a consistent layer of ink, but you're also not using all of the ink. So it can actually save money in that area. Now, a print to numbers approach, which, as I said, is pretty much a standard term in litho, hasn't been so much in flexography. But the first thing you've got to do is a fingerprint has to be produced by the printer. It's got to be repeatable. It's got to be the best set of conditions that you have, but you do some testing to set that up. We help with that sort of thing. You then print that. The trade house reads these patterns and creates a profile of, or a map of the print condition, and that profile gets given to the printer, and that can be given to the design house, and the design house can use that to proof to using the color space from the printer. Okay, so, but the key thing is that the color management software creates the profile, and one of the things that we've seen over the years, and what I've seen over my lifetime in this industry, is that it's gone from being rocket science to being very simple, if you let it be simple. People will tell you it's more complex than it needs to be. I'm talking about color management. But if you can control all the processes to be consistent, predictable, and repeatable, you'll then have the opportunity to create color profiles and be able to print to those. But all processes must be consistent and highly repeatable every time. A little word about profiles. People talk about color profiles. Now, the International Color Consortium, which is a group that was set up about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, it defined how to describe color and map color, and they came up with the color profile. Now, the color profile, each profile contains the substrate color, the spectral data, those are the ink sets, the dot gain. But if you change any one of those 3 things, you've got to really go back and reprofile. Now, if you think of all the different substrates that Flexo uses, the different label substrates, you're printing on foil, printing on white, you're printing on foil, you're printing on a yellowish stock, you're printing on a brilliant white stock, an A1 stock. They all have different substrate colors to start with. Now, they will change the way the print looks. But if you change any one of those, you're going to make a new profile. That's what's always put the fear of people about, well, geez, how many times do I have to make a profile? And with Flexo, with surface print, reverse print, different ink sets for light fast, not light fast, for better lamination, for retort packaging, all the different ink variations you have, you'd end up with hundreds of profiles. So anyway, the technology advanced color management solutions create profiles differently today, and substrate color, spectral data, and dot gain, each of those are kept in a separate layer. So if you change one, you just have to put that value in, and you don't have to go back and reprofile unless you change the spectral data. But the dot gain and the substrate colors, which are usually the things that have changed the most, they need to be, they can be just updated very quickly. And that's ideally suited for Flexo. Now, a color managed workflow where you've got the brand design and the trade house, they share the profile. There used to be a time when people thought, it's my IP. But if you've got a proof made from the profile of the printer and all internal reviews are made with that, you're actually setting the color expectations if it's going to appear at the print site. So they make a proof, the printer gets the proof, but it's already been proofed in their profile. And then everything will be, if it's consistent, the print will match the proof. Now, there'll be times when a brand works with a standard ISO, a global brand will work with an ISO profile, like FOGRA 39L, which is fine. But if with the, there's really some amazing technology which has been developed that enables what's called device linking. So you can actually take the PDF that was produced, the proof, which was ISO, put it through this system, and I call it a washing machine. It actually recalculates the color space into the printer's profile, and where they can actually then make a proof with their own print profile, and it will match the original proof over here. It's quite remarkable technology. It's stuff that I've been watching for about 30 years, and it's now, with artificial intelligence, come to a point where it really works. And it's a bit of a showstopper in terms of the opportunities that presents. So the plates are produced and everything will match. Now, this is an example of something that came through that way. The proof was made to an ISO standard. The printer has their own print profile. They put it through the device link software, and they're able to produce this print, go to print from the proof within 15 minutes, and it was a perfect match. Today, the client doesn't even send down a marketing person to okay the press results, because there's no compromises that need to be made. They know what they get on the proof is what they're capable of printing, so they don't have to change anything. But the key is process control. So you get that right, and you get your profiles built, and you can actually go and do this sort of stuff. And it's quite remarkable how efficient it is, and you're setting the expectation at the proof, not on the press. Extended color gamut, you'll hear a lot about this. This is a growing area of interest. Extended color gamut with CMYK, that's an opportunity as well. With a standard FOGRA 39L, you're going to reproduce about 65% of the PMS colors. If you increase your densities a bit more and you profile that, you can actually get up to another 5%, 4 or 5% more PMS colors and more vibrance. And we call that extended color gamut, CMYK. And then the designers work within that gamut. So you give them a list of the PMS colors that are achieved in that, and they work through that. So it's about working with the designer, with the trade house, with the brand. Then you go into extended color gamut, which is CMYK OGV, and out of the 2000 PMS colors, you can reproduce about 90% of them. Now, I borrowed this slide from Benny Lander from the Lander Technologies with their nano presses. CMYK has a gamut, a standard gamut, an ISO standard, which I mentioned is a little bit lower than what you can achieve. And all of these corporate colors fell outside of that CMYK offset. But you put in the orange, blue, and green, green, orange, and blue, you actually extend the gamut, and all of those corporate colors were covered. Now, what I want to make a point of, this is exactly how digital printing works. So the thing that's been put up to be the future of the industry is only extended color gamut. That's digital printing. That's how it works. It doesn't have spot colors. So start thinking about that in Flexo, because when you use it in Flexo and you use color management and you use it well, you can actually achieve a lot more colors, and you don't have to change inks, you just change plates. So these 3 jobs are just used with the same ink sets, and they're just one after the other, just changing plates and keeping the ink in place. Now that it actually reduces waste. There's less solvents in cleaning up spot colors, there reduced ink returns, faster make readies because it's more predictable, and then reduced time. It significantly improves press yield, mainly because of the reduction in the make readies, as I mentioned before. And that's upwards of about 30%. Now, you saw in my earlier chart that we could actually print 40% more jobs in a day if we reduce the make ready times. Now, just a little bit about extended color gamut. It's crucial to work with a brand. Just don't think you can go to 7 color printing and not work with the brand. But the low-hanging fruit is to take the CMYK files with multiple spot colors and turn them into CMYK with 1 spot color. But mandatory, you must have a color management strategy. And I would really encourage you to do it yourself with the support of some of the key players that have some really brilliant systems. Then you work back from the press to control over the process. But again, consistency with all components is the key thing, with really some advanced plate technologies which are out there. Work with the pre-press to map the print conditions, and use standard inks out of the tin. You don't have to do anything special in this space because of the way color management can work, where you're just mapping out the process to suit yourself, not to suit a standard. Right. On the press side, all 7 colors are going to be controlled for density and dot gain. And that's, we don't go and measure LAB values and you've got to print to those values. That takes a lot of time. We just want to use ink out of the tin and we create a profile to those standards. Do not change analogs as tapes. You can't do that. You can't all of a sudden think, oh, it looks light. If it's light, it's because something's wrong. If you've set up the press properly and the proof profile is okay, then there's something else wrong. So don't change analogs, don't change tapes once you've set it up. You just got to print to numbers. The profile is built to standard inks, unless you choose to go down the path of a standard like grey coal. Grey coal stands for the offset lithography, is the OL. So it's not, it's something that has been adapted to Flexo, but it's also, you spend a lot of time setting it up and it puts a lot of people off color management, to be quite frank. Then proof to print match is crucial for fast make readies. Unless you've got that right and you've got the profiles right, you can waste time on the press. Computerized plate mounting, important. Now, what's required from the press side? There's pre-press side, there's 2 models. You can either have the artwork with CMYK images and spot colors, where the CMYK remains the CMYK, but the spot colors are converted into 7 colors. Now, there's never more than about 2 or 3 colors that are used for any of the spot colors, just a mixture. So not every time, if you've got a job that's got some brilliant graphics in CMYK and a red background, you'll probably only use the CMYK orange. And that's how the software works. It only looks at the colors it needs. So you don't have to print the green and the violet in that case. But if you use a model 2, which is very rare, you work with the RGB images off the digital cameras, you can actually convert images and spot colors into the CMYK OGV. So it's an expanded gamut for images. But most times designers have already converted the file to CMYK. So there's no benefit in going to that process unless you're going to go to the trouble of working with RGB. And there's very, very few people doing it. But there is a benefit, and that is that if you look at this lizard, this was off the RGB imaging, and that was converted out to 7 colors. And this was just the CMYK conversion. You can see there's a little bit of vibrance difference, and that's what happens with CMYK. But every time you use this in a graphic, and it's only a benefit again if you use the RGB images, you've got to use all 7 colors. All 7 colors. Wouldn't matter if you had a red background, you still use the green and the violet. That's just the different ways. Now, fade to zero with Flexo. This is one of the most critical parts, and it's only the areas from 0 to 2%. And you think, well, that's only a fraction of what I print, 0 to 2%. But it's so important. And one of the things there's hybrid screens, which are designed to be used with advanced plate technology. And it's only microns we're talking about. We're talking about a 21 micron dot. Without this, you won't be able to reproduce digital type printing, gravure type printing, where it starts at 0. Flexography starts at a minimum dot, usually around about 2%, the print's at about 10%. The image here you're seeing is a classic 2% minimum dot, and it's got to stop somewhere, and then you have the raised image. So that's no image, that's the thing. But with a hybrid screen, you'll see that has softened that edge. The hybrid screen uses a stochastic screen to have the visual effect of fading to 0. But again, that's got to be repeatable. Without it being repeatable and predictable, it's not going to work. Now, the importance of this is seen in this slide here, where you've got a Flexo with a 2% minimum dot, and you can see here, you can read the word white over the spoon. That's because there's a 2% minimum dot in the image underneath. And you can see here, it's not fading into the substrate. But by itself, it would look quite good. Over here, we have a fade to 0. And you can see you can't see the lettering, the ITE, and you can see here it's fading into 0. But that's part of the story. The purples look cleaner, the greens look cleaner, and the reds look cleaner. And that's because they've got minimum dots as well. The red's got a minimum dot of cyan in it. So it's not just these white areas, it's actually all images. And that's where you can get a huge benefit in terms of flexography if you use fade to 0. But you've got to have some highly technical plates, or not technical plates, but advanced plates that can actually support those very fine dots that need to fade to 0. Digital printing works that way as well as gravure, and it's normal to start at 0 with gravure. It's normal to start at 0 with digital printing. So just in summary, brands require cost efficiencies in FMCG packaging. There's no question about that. But when you're looking at how to improve your efficiencies, look at the total cost of production, not just the individual consumable costs. Don't look for the cheapest ink set. Look for the one that's going to give you the best ink laydown or the best densities. And then same with the plates. You'll find cheaper plates, no question about it. But do they deliver what you need to deliver? And does that add to the cost of your job in terms of not being able to achieve the quality? So when it comes to looking at the total cost of a job, and that is, how quickly you can make ready, how much ink you can save, it's not the individual components that you've got to look at, it's the overall total cost of that job. And that's where you should be focusing on. If you get the correct mix of technologies where you can use less waste, higher press yields, and which will improve your profitability, then it's going to make you more efficient and probably enable you to put off buying a second press and maximize the potential of the presses you have. So the focus on improving press yields by reducing make-ready times is a crucial thing I wanted to get across today, because that's where you're going to make some money and you're going to save, you're going to reduce waste, you're going to be able to produce more jobs in a day. If you can focus on improving your press yields by reducing the make-ready times, and you can do it. There are processes and plates and color management systems, simple color management systems out there. It'll mean you've got to buy a proofing device to put in your plant. because the beauty of that is you can run a proof to show how it's going to print on your press, and you can see before you put it on the press if there's any issues. So look at buying a press, a proofing press, not a press, but a proofing engine, say an Epson with some color management software, and you can start making proofs to simulate how it's going to print, where you can actually go to your client and say, look, this is how it's going to print. Are you happy with that? And in ANZ, where I'm from, that's exactly how brands work these days. They see it on a proof, they sign off on the proof, and that's what they expect to see on the press result. So you've got to establish simple yet accurate color management, and with advanced solutions. You've got to process control on your presses. You've got to control and standardize. You can't change things. And don't chase density with analoxes. I've got there use advanced technology plates for ink control. That's actually, one of the things that I spend most of my time with these days, is to show how that can work and how the benefits of it in conjunction with color management. You've got to use that proof to set the expectations. You have to work towards that. And the reason that it's not acceptable today is that it's not being matched on press. You see, the moment you start matching the print result on the proof, you can show people, this is what we're going to print. And if you don't like it, well, then change it. But most of the time at the moment, you're going onto your press and you're making the change. You're then sort of the client saying, well, I don't really like that. Can we fix it? If you start using 7-color printing, you can't have the same flexibility in terms of, oh, I'll just put a bit more magenta in because it needs it, because it'll affect other colors, spot colors. But you've got to aim to achieve quality parity with digital, but you can also do that with gravure. Then invest in systems and technology that enable agility and flexibility so that you can adapt to what's been an ever-evolving industry in trends. And we see this, I don't like the word trends because it sort of seems to be, it'll be there one day, gone the next. But a trend in my time has been, to simplify color management. I spent a lot of years training people on scanners and color management by twisting knobs. Today, it's all by print by numbers. You get it right and you just measure it. And we just look at the numbers rather than the job, because if the numbers are right, it will match the proof. The other thing is, you've got to be adaptive. And one of the things I like showing is, and these are the most expensive words used in business, we've always done it this way. You've got to be able to think, well, maybe it's time for a change, and maybe we've got to start doing things a little bit different to take advantage of some of the technology that's been developed by the vendors in this wonderful industry that I've had the pleasure of working in for so long. So I think we've gone a little bit over time, but I just wanted to thank you. That QR code, which thanks to COVID has become quite recognizable these days. That's my email address. If anybody wants to scan that, feel free to send an email to me. But that's all I wanted to cover for this afternoon. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time out on a Saturday. I guess we're opening for questions, but I'll pass it over to our friends at LMAI.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. Can I request Rajesh Nimaji to please take the mic, please? Rajesh Nimaji, please. President LMAI.
Yeah. Hello, friends. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure meeting you all after such a long time. Mr. Steve Smith has shared with us his deep knowledge of the industry, and we all are going to be benefited with the same. I thank you, thank Mr. Steve Smith and Miraculon. I'm sure you all are enjoying a knowledge accelerating growth series webinars. Today's was the second and the third one is coming up on January 8th. Detailed information will be mailed to you in due course of time. To give more value to your membership, we are launching LMI's own digital newsletter, the Label Gupshup. The first issue will be in your mailbox by December 6th. To ensure that you receive regular copies of the Label Gupshup and other communication from the LMI office, kindly update your mail IDs as soon as possible. Label Gupshup will have articles on technological developments in the industry, happenings in and around the label world, government regulations, and of course achieved by our members. I invite members to share their any article and experience and any achievements by the members they want to publish in the Label Gupshup. Of course, the final say to accept, reject, modify, edit will be with the Label Gupshup team. Before I hand over the floor again to our Honorary Secretary for further proceeding, I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Mr. Anurag Mohan, whose birthday is coming up tomorrow on 5th December. Very happy birthday, Anurag ji.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dimaji.
I hand over the floor to Anurag, Mr. Jaideep.
Happy
Please.
birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh ji, and wishing Anurag a very happy birthday too. Now I would request I have a few questions on the chat. I would ask these questions to our honorable speaker, Mr. Steve Smith, and I would request him to please. There's a question from Mr. Pandey, PK Pandey. Can you confirm standard wastage in label industry for an 8 to 10 color job?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Can you confirm standard wastage in a label industry for 8 to 10 color job? What would be considered as a good, a standard wastage, which is an acceptable norm in the industry?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, but but you'd need to qualify that 8 to 10 colors. Are you talking about 4 color CMYK plus 3 colors plus spots, or are we talking about ECG with standard ink sets? But look, whatever the wastage is, you've got to look at ways of reducing it. Now, I used to work in offset where IKEA, who you would know, they printed global catalogs, and they would not accept. They had a criteria way back, this would be about 15 years ago, that they said that they would not accept any more than 5% waste. So the printer had to show that they were only wasting 5% of the total run in terms of setting up and running. Now that seems a lot when you're talking about runs of a couple of million catalogs, but that was what they established. But the objective is always to see how you can reduce the waste. I don't think there's ever an acceptable amount of waste. What you've got to do is to take it to a bare minimum. You've got to reduce it. And if you've got 10% waste, look at making it 5. If you've got 5% waste, look at making it 3. You've always got to look at ways of how to reduce that and not accept a percentage as being a standard.
Wow, that's a great answer. I agree with Stephen that totally, because
my question is that how much the standard wastage, because everybody is talking about the reduce the wastage and make the more profits. As you know, in India, maximum the road running length is the 2000 meter, and suppose we are doing the printing in the Flexo machine, so 50 to 60 meter is the length. So 3% wastage is just in the threading wastage. And how much wastage is the standard generally to match the 8 to 10 color jobs? Is there any standard?
No.
Every management is asking, you have to reduce the wastage. You have to reduce the wastage. So how much you can reduce the wastage? 8 to 10.
Well, look, there is no standard, but there will be averages. I don't know what, and the average is dependent on whether you're using, as I said, 7 color. Because when you look at, if you're using 4 color plus 4 spots, then you've got the wash up of those 4 spots each time. So there's a lot of waste in terms of ink and wash up and solvents and those sorts of things. But if you're using 7 colors where you're not, ECG, where you're not washing up the inks each time, there's less waste in that space. So I don't think there's a, unless I'm wrong, and I could be, but I don't think there's a standard amount. But there's, as I said, you've really got to look at your own operation to see if you can reduce it in any way, and never accept any level of waste. That you've always got to question yourself. So, can I do better? Okay. And it's only when you've done everything possible that you look at yourself and say, okay, that's probably as good as I get. But just one figure. We know that when you go to extended color gamut, the efficiencies dramatic in the fact you can actually improve your efficiencies by about 30%. And there's some papers that have just recently been written that support that. So I'd encourage you to sort of look at those sorts of things. But it'd be wrong to say 10% is your average, because you always got to try and do better. So the same, and that's why I mean with make-ready times, whatever you're doing now, try and reduce it. Whatever you reduce it means you can print more jobs and you'll have less waste.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the answer. The next question is from Rajesh Nimaji. He says that in the ECG, can you use all 7 colors in halftone image as well, or these images are still CMYK and the other shades are matched using CMYK or OGB?
Well, most of the modern methodologies keep the CMYK. You get a piece of artwork that's got, let's take it back to the artwork. You'll have the artwork that's got CMYK plus, let's say, 3-4 spot colors. The software will convert the spot colors into the extended color gamut. So it will use the 7 colors the best way possible. If you've got let's say a PMS 300, a blue, it will work out that, okay, it'll be solid cyan and then a percentage of the violet. All right, so it will calculate out those. So that's only using 2 of the 7 colors to reproduce that spot color. So, but it's, when you look at 8-bit color, which is what most digital cameras work off and what we use in printing, you've got 16 million colors. So there's a lot of colors we're going to reproduce, and there's 2,000 Pantone colors. So it's the software calculates out what's the best combination with the minimum amount of those colors. Now, getting back to the PMS 300, if you've got CMYK plus a PMS 300, no other spot color on it, you'll only use CMYK plus the violet. Is the green and the orange won't be used. And that's the beauty of the software. Now, the other thing with that is that most people think, oh, the angles, that you've got, you've only got 90 degrees, we've got 4 colors, now we've got 7 colors, we've got to fit into 90 degrees. But the software is also clever enough to work out that the red and the cyan, they're never together. So you normally use the cyan angle on the red color because they don't ever match, ever overlap. So in answer to your question, it's the software does all the work in terms of calculating out the colors. And there are some really clever softwares that say, well, if I just dropped off the orange, what would it do to this PMS color? And it will give you a figure of, maybe 4 delta E, and that the color will be different without the orange in it. And so you can actually look at ways of reducing the amount of plates you use just by cleverly using the software. It's it's been simplified over the years. It really used to be rocket science. I could tell you, it was, that's why I don't have any hair. So I spent too many years working in color. But today with color management systems, it's really been simplified, and I really encourage you guys to look at it, talk to the vendors, and just look at how you can simplify that process to standardize what you do, rather than go to a print standard, create your own standard and then match that every time and make proofs on your own at your own site to show what you're going to print. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Steve. Steve, you had referred to a PDF conversion system in your this thing, in which there is a certain standard, and when you run it through this PDF or this software, you can match it to the press standard which you have and achieve that color. So, what are you referring to, or which software are you referring to in that?
Okay, well, it's called device linking, and what it is, it used to be in the early days, it used to take the CMYK, take it back into LAB values, RGB, and then back into CMYK, and it really made a mess of the blacks. And this was in offset, right? So it was only CMYK. Today, there's some packages out there, and the best device, I have to say, the best device linking I've come across is from GMG, and it's called Color Server, and it's got some artificial intelligence in it, and it's quite amazing. I saw a job that went from gravure to Flexo, and because of the different curves they'd used, there was about 3 hours retouching on every bit of artwork. Now, there were 25 SKUs, so there was a lot of retouching to be done. We put it through the device link software, so from the known profile that the proof was created from into the new print profile, and it took 10 minutes per job.
Wow.
So 3 hours down to 10 minutes.
Fantastic.
But it's got to be, you've got to have your profiles right, and you've got to work within that. But look, it's come such a long way, and I would have been sitting here 7 years ago and said, no, it doesn't work. But today I can tell you it works, and
Wow.
It's worth looking at.
I think it's worth looking at, and we should look at that kind of software and figure this out.
Yep.
I don't have any more questions. Does anybody have any questions? They can unmute and ask Steve. I don't see any questions coming. So I would ask Mr. Harsh to please propose a word of thanks.
On behalf of Miraklon, I really want to take this opportunity to thank the leadership team at LMAI first. So Nima ji, Mahajan ji, Jaideep ji, and Zaveri ji for taking this whole initiative to host these knowledge sessions around accelerating growth, as well as initiatives like Label Gupshup, and Anurag ji, of course, for hosting today's session. I think these are much needed motivation to the industry, and it's important to have these proactive discussions around the latest innovations and process improvements in order to move this industry forward. I also want to thank the members who attended for taking the time out of their schedules, and also for showing extraordinary resilience and determination in doing their business despite all the challenging times that we have seen. And as Jaideep ji said in his email signature, hum saath saath hai. And that's a sentiment we very much share. We really look forward to staying connected with the members and the industry at large, and to support the innovation that you have and to move Flexo forwards. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful weekend ahead, and again, a very happy birthday to Anurag ji in advance.
Thank you very much, Harsh ji. And now I would like to request you would listen to us again on our next series, which is coming up on 8th of January. So the new year, again, we shall have another program coming shortly. All the details would be in your email. And before that, we will have the label gupshup, that is the little talk about labels, in your mails shortly. Thank you, and thank you everyone for taking out time and being with us. Have a nice day. Rajesh ji has something to say. Rajesh ji, can you unmute and please?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Harsh and Mr. Steve in my personal capacity and on behalf of LMAI. I thank you both of you very much. Thank you very much for you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Steve,
so much.
for especially coming in so late in the night for you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Karan Johar.